Happy video day, guys. Christina, Brooke here. Today we are doing a Make Up Your Mind. I am so excited. I haven't done a Make Up Your Mind in so long because, well, I don't know. There hasn't been that many like eyeshadow palette releases, or at least not ones that have called my attention enough to do this entire video for it. But there was an announcement of an eyeshadow palette that looked kind of interesting, and especially because it was interesting for this brand. So in today's Make Up Your Mind, we are going to try to find in my collection the new Nars launch. This is this beautiful 9-shade eyeshadow palette that has been announced by Nars. Apparently it is being sold in Asia already, but it has not come to the States yet. So usually these type of shadow palettes retail around $49 US. So I am going to go ahead and guess that this will be around $49 US. I don't know yet when it's going to be available here in the States, but I am very intrigued. At least we're seeing something somewhat different here. Not saying that I can't find it, just saying that at least the colors are different. So if you guys are new to Make Up Your Mind, what I do is when a brand new eyeshadow palette releases that intrigues me, what I do is go through my collection and try to find similar colors to kind of swatch out the eyeshadow palette and get an idea of what it is really gonna look like. And then I can determine whether I already own the shades a million times over. And sometimes just having something swatched on your arm, you can get an idea of whether this is even something that you're going to use a lot, or if maybe you don't even really like the colors. Maybe it looks really pretty in the packaging, but when you swatch it, you're like, when would I ever wear this? So that's what I do in this video. We try to make some educated guesses here before we purchase. So if you guys are excited and if you like this kind of video, don't forget to go ahead and hit subscribe. I love to talk about makeup and also fashion. If you like those things, love to see you again. And let's go ahead. Let's get into a Make Up Your Mind right now. So first things first, I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys my results. So this is what I came up with. So here you have my swatches that I came up with, as well as the swatches that were released by Trend Mood on their Instagram. So these are my comparisons. This is what I was able to come up with. This is what I think the palette is going to look like. I'm going to be honest, this is my kind of color story. I love the colors that are inside of this palette. Not to say that I do not have palettes similar to this one, because I actually kind of do, and you might too, but I really love this color story. It's my kind of color story. So in order to find this palette, I did jump into a few palettes. I will say that some of these palettes have so many of the colors, but they are like missing one or two, that if you have these palettes, you have like maybe a lot of the colors. So the first one was my Charlotte Tilbury Icon palette. Do you guys remember this beauty that was released by Charlotte Tilbury? I did get a few colors out of here. Probably could have even gotten more, but I found some more colors that looked a little more similar inside of the Urban Decay Born to Run. So if you have the Born to Run, that's another palette that I jumped into. But there was also two very distinct colors that inside of those two palettes I couldn't find exact. I did jump into the ABH Subculture to grab one shade. There's a very similar shade also inside of the Natasha Denona Safari. And I jumped into this palette right here. This is the Extravagance palette from Marc Jacobs for one shade that I could not find in any of the other palettes. So those are the 4 palettes that I used to mimic this palette to a T, like almost as close as I possibly can get to the swatches. But like I said before, some of these palettes have very similar hues that if you're not trying to get exact, you may just be able to like get away with maybe like one of these two, just saying. So for the first color, this is one of the shades that I had a little harder time, and that's why I had to jump into the Extravagance by Marc Jacobs. It looks a little bit of a cooler toned brown, at least from the swatch, and this palette actually had this color right here that almost looked identical to me to the swatch that I saw online. Every single one of the other palettes, their browns were very warm. This looked a little cool, so it looked like it's gonna go more in this direction. Now there's also a possibility that this shade could be a little lighter, and if it is lighter than this one, then you may be able to find it in palettes like this one already. But for the sake of the video and as close as I can get to the swatches that I saw on screen, this is the color that I picked, and it does look pretty similar to what I saw in the picture. So the next one, I jumped into Charlotte Tilbury. Now, I'm gonna tell you guys, between the Urban Decay and the Charlotte Tilbury, there's very similar tones. I just grabbed the one that I thought was closer, and so I used Charlotte Tilbury for this one. So what I did was I grabbed into this color right here, and this color looked very, very close to the color that I saw swatched on the arm. It is a warm tone brown, very useful color, and with the colors in this palette, it does make a lot of sense. I really love this color in the Charlotte Tilbury palette. It's one of the colors that I use the most when I grab this palette. And the shade difference between these two look pretty good. Like, I'm gonna get some dimension, and I could probably even use these two together and not feel like they blend into each other. Cross fingers, but that's what it looks like. So for the next one, I jumped into Charlotte Tilbury, and I jumped into this shade right here. This looks like it's going to be a very stark, very light metallic, but it's gonna have a champagne undertone. So this palette had the closest one that was a little less gold, because looking at the swatches from Nars, it looks a little less gold. It looks more champagne, it looks a little on the light side, and I felt like this was the closest one that I could find. I really like this color as well. I think it matches really nice with the browns. It also is gonna look pretty good with the greens, as you guys will see coming up. But so far, yeah, I mean, it's basic. It's basic but useful, and I'm not mad at the colors that are picked right now. They're just nothing out of this world, but they're pretty. And like always, guys, the eye look that you're seeing right now is an eye look that I think that you can create if you buy the new Nars palette, because all the colors that I used on my lid are colors that we're talking about today. Like always, on Instagram, there is going to be a video that's going to post kind of showing you guys how I came up with this eye look. So let's move on to the next color, because now is where it starts to get a little bit more interesting. So they did add a color that looks a little bit more like a gold pop, and it's interesting because the color that I got was also inside the Charlotte Tilbury palette, and it's this one right here. It has a lot more gold to it, and one thing that I've noticed from the Charlotte Tilbury palette is they look more similar in the pan than they do on the lid. This one goes a little bit more champagne. This one has a little bit more of like a gold undertone. I feel like this palette is going to do something very similar. In the pan, they might look kind of close, but swatch, they're going to look pretty different. That's what I'm seeing, and this is a very, very useful, very easy to use color story, very Nars. I don't think it's anything different for Nars at this point right here, but I guess they decided that they wanted to switch things up a little bit, and I'm happy that they did, because otherwise it would have been just like another typical Nars palette, but they did add some interesting colors. So I could have stuck to Charlotte Tilbury for the next color, because there is this green right here that I was very close, but it had a little bit more blue in it that I liked. So I ended up jumping into the Urban Decay, and I grabbed this color called Wanderlust, and I thought this was a little bit closer to what I'm seeing in the swatch. And this is a really pretty, like, deep mossy metallic green. And I believe that this one is going to be a deep mossy metallic green, maybe a tad lighter than this one. It could possibly be, but I love mossy metallic greens. I love mossy mattes. This is like my, I really love this area of color. You could do the most beautiful smoky eyes with some green, and you can also add it into softer lids. I just love this tone of green for the lid. So I'm happy with this. This looks very Nars, but in a little bit of a different direction now. Now we're adding a little green in there, which I'm happy that they did. And the next one was also pretty interesting. It's a color that I like to use inside of Urban Decay, and it's this color called Smog, and I grabbed this one. It's like a bronze that has a little brown in it. It almost looks like a bronzy brown, like it's smoggy. That's a really good name, Smog. So it looks like Smog. The color inside of the new palette from Nars looks kind of close to this one. Like almost like they were looking at this as inspiration, and like they're right next to each other, and they're like, yes, those two need to be in my palette, you know? So I like this color story so far. I think it's very useful. I do think that people will have this, and I do think that there's certain palettes that have this already, but I really, really do like the color story. All right, so now is where it got a little tricky for me, because in the two palettes that dominated this video, so these two palettes, that's where I found most of the colors, there was no matte mossy green. And I don't own many matte mossy greens. It's a hard color to come across, to be honest. So I looked inside of the Safari from Natasha and I found a color that looked really similar, but I almost felt like the color in the ABH, this color called Destiny, was almost a little closer to what I saw online. So this is a nice matte mossy green that I love. It's like in between a hunter and a moss, like more moss. It looks grungy. It's really, really, really beautiful. I love this kind of green. This is also my kind of green. This is a beautiful smoky shade. You can also put it all over the lid, mix it in with some browns and do a really awesome smoky eye. You can use it as an outer edge color just to add a little color to a look. You can use some of the lighter metallics and put the green on the outer edge. I love that there's a matte green in here. I think that that was a really good idea and I really, really like it. So now the next color is also a color that I thought was pretty good. I mean, inside of Urban Decay, there's this color right here. So it's called Good as Gone. And it's almost like a very deep, rich brown that it almost looks like it has some purple in it. Like it's really deep. And I love, love this rich brown. It's very cool tone as well. I love the way this also looks with green. So these are like perfect tones. Like I love the way that this mossy green matte looks with this deep, rich, cool tone brown. This is going in a really pretty direction. Not gonna lie. Now, the last color was kind of like a wild card. And I think this was like just to be able to add something that you can go in a different direction, but it's also something that was done inside of the Urban Decay Born to Run. And I grabbed this color called Radio, which is like a blue. It looks like they added just like a random touch of blue in there. So like if you wanted to go in the blue direction, you could switch everything up and just use a blue. So this is like your random pop that I honestly think like, did it really need it? Maybe not. It would have been cooler if this would have been like a greenish, yellowish lime, like real standout metallic to kind of go with this color story. This random blue makes the palette look cool, like aesthetically, but did it have to be there? Probably not. Now, one thing that it does kind of help is like, let's say you didn't want to go in a greener direction. You can use this blue with any of these neutral browns and do an eye look. Green and blue you can use together too, a little bit more difficult. I would say one should be top lid, one should be lower lash line, and I think it'll work a little bit better than blending them together. You can do it. You have a chance of going a little peacock, but you can do it. So I do like this color story. So this is what I think that the new Nars palette may look like. As you guys can tell from my reaction, I like this color story, okay? I think this seems very, very pretty. It's within my realm of colors that I really, really, really enjoy. Now, Nars is one of those brands that I've been looking for a palette that I say yes, because they're very known for their eyeshadows. A lot of times their eyeshadows are very good sellers. People really like their formula. I just haven't found one that I didn't feel was so basic. This one may not be as basic. This is kind of cool. It is a little reminiscent of the new Wild West palette that just released. It is very reminiscent of the Urban Decay Born to Run. I think is probably one of the closest ones. It's reminiscent also of the Charlotte Tilbury Icon palette. And I did pull some other palettes that I thought had similar color stories. I didn't use them for this video because they were missing or they weren't exact. But the new palette that I tried from NYX, which is the Away We Glow palette. This one has a similar color story, just a little on the lighter side and doesn't have the blue. The Khaki Haze from Huda Beauty was one that I really thought was going to be identical. It has some colors, but not every single one. But if you do have this palette, you have a lot of the colors. You kind of have something similar. I do think that the new Nars one may be deeper, a little richer. And the other one is the Metropolis from Natasha Denona. Has, you know, a similar color story. It's not identical, but you are getting similar looks. So if you have any of those, yeah, do you have something similar? Sure, you do. And since I own a lot of eyeshadow palettes, of course I have something similar to this. So for me personally, it's gonna go down to usage and how much do I like it. And I think for me personally, I wanna pick this up. So I'm going to make up my mind and say, yes, I am going to pick up this new Nars palette when it releases in the States. Hopefully it will, which I believe it will. But when this releases in the States, I'm going to pick it up. It's an interesting eyeshadow palette. I like that it's different for NARS. I also think that people might find this to be a beautiful color story, and you know, maybe something they'd want to add to the collection. So I would love to have it on the channel for you guys to show you guys the quality and everything. I think this might be worth it, so I'm gonna pick it up. So anyways, guys, I want to know from you guys down below, what do you guys think? Are you excited for this one? Do you think it's too similar to some of the palettes that you have in your collection? Leave me those comments. But anyways, yeah, that's all we have for today's video. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you have not already, and follow me over on Instagram at Christina Brooke Beauty to see this eye look that will be coming up pretty soon. But anyways, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.